Welcome to The Explainer. I am so glad you're joining us today because we're going to tackle a topic that is honestly long overdue for some clarity. Today, we're putting aside decades of cultural myths, the whispers, the rumors, and we're zeroing in strictly on the medical realities of human anatomy. Specifically, we're going to look at how hymenal tissue actually changes during first vaginal intercourse. We're going to let the clinical evidence lead the way here, completely breaking down the exact anatomical responses step by step. So let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Does the hymen really break? This is probably one of the single most pervasive cultural expectations out there when it comes to reproductive anatomy. It's this deeply ingrained idea that there is this sudden, definitive pop, or the breaking of a physical seal. And for generations, this concept of breaking has totally shaped how we view first intercourse. But when we actually step back and look at the medical research and the clinical reality of the tissue itself, well, that expectation just doesn't hold up to scientific scrutiny at all.
Think about it like this. On one side, you have this idea of a membrane suddenly breaking, which represents that imagined rigid seal we were just talking about. But then look at the actual anatomical reality. It's a flexible tissue accommodating movement and stretching. Instead of imagining this brittle barrier that just snaps or tears like paper, it is so much more medically accurate to think of the hymenal rim as adaptable. It's dynamic. It's flexible. And the language we use to describe this really matters. Shifting our mindset from a rigid breaking point to a flexible accommodation, well, it fundamentally changes how we understand the body.
Now, because this tissue is flexible rather than rigid, its response to first vaginal penetration absolutely isn't some universal, one-size-fits-all event. The outcomes can actually vary significantly from person to person. And you might be wondering, why is that? Well, it's because the hymenal tissue responds differently depending on two major anatomical factors: its natural structure and its natural elasticity. Just like literally any other tissue in your body, the baseline shape and the stretchiness of the hymen are entirely unique to the individual.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we mean by flexibility. For a lot of people, the tissue just stretches without any noticeable injury whatsoever. The opening might become somewhat wider, and the tissue just changes shape slightly. These are highly individualized, incredibly gentle responses. The tissue is quite literally accommodating the movement by stretching and slightly altering its shape. It's not suffering some traumatic break. It really just highlights the incredible, natural adaptability of human anatomy when we focus on the facts instead of the fiction.
However, to give you the complete clinical picture here, we definitely need to look at other highly possible outcomes. The medical literature notes that small, superficial tears may develop and minor bleeding may occur. We want to be sure we're giving you a perfectly accurate view without overstating the likelihood of injury. While stretching and accommodation are super common, it is also completely normal for minor, superficial injuries or light bleeding to happen as the tissue is challenged by new movement. It's all just part of the normal, varied spectrum of how this specific tissue behaves.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how directly it completely subverts everything we've been taught by popular culture. Get this, little or no visible change may occur, and the tissue may remain clearly present afterward. I mean, that is a surprising fact for so many people. You could go through first vaginal intercourse and experience practically zero visible change to the anatomy. The hymenal tissue can remain clearly and obviously present. This completely shatters that old myth of the disappearing or permanently broken hymen. The tissue can literally just stretch and then stay exactly where it was.
Section 1. The UK Clinical Guidance, Medical Authority. I want to read this direct quote from the UK government's clinical guidance clearly, because it really serves as the ultimate medical mic drop on this topic. After puberty, the hymen can range from thin and stretchy to thicker and less flexible. It is not guaranteed to break or bleed. Notice the emphasis there on the spectrum of tissue types ranging from thin and stretchy to thicker and less flexible. And most importantly, that definitive, undeniable medical conclusion: it is simply not guaranteed to break and it is not guaranteed to bleed. The science is incredibly clear on this.
So the crucial point is this: we have to update our collective vocabulary to actually match the clinical reality. If the hymen isn't guaranteed to break or bleed, how does that change the way we talk about anatomy? Well, it means we can finally stop using language rooted in damage or loss and start using language based on flexibility, elasticity, and individual biological variants. It empowers us to completely rethink those old inaccurate narratives and replace them with solid evidence-based understanding. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning the myths and seeking out the facts.